Unplugged with Nap. Yeah, we cut through the noise. No script, no leash, no polished decoys. Broadcasting without permission. We don't ask. We lift the curtain and we drop the mask. Unplugged with Nap.
Well, hello there to all the good people of Ohio and beyond. This is Aaron Knapp, and you're tuned into Unplugged, broadcasting without permission. This is a place where the truth gets louder and we dig deeper, and where we always remember, be lawful, not awful. If you want the full stories, the documents, the videos, and everything they don't want you to see, head on over to AaronKnappUnplugged.com. My new home for every investigation, every episode, and every update. And while you're here, be sure to like the video, follow the page, and hit subscribe. And share this with someone who needs the truth. We're building something real here. We're building something fearless. And we're doing it together. Welcome to Unplugged. Let's kick this thing off. Well, hello there, guys. Good afternoon. Hey, it's Aaron Knapp here on this beautiful Friday. It's December 5th, Friday afternoon, right before the weekend. Hope you guys are enjoying yourselves today. I was putting together a podcast last night, but this one was a little bit, took me a little bit longer to kind of get through the mess. I had to go and find a few little pieces for it in my email. But today we're going to do a little bit of talking about the prosecutor, the sheriff, McCann, and tie a little bit back into Nancy Smith because, and JD, because it seems to continue to keep going right back to those individuals every chance I get to look at. So today we're going to talk about the lie that outlived the truth. And some false statements, they don't explode right when they're made. They start to sink quietly. They settle into files. They harden into like your administrative memory. And then one day, maybe it's, months, maybe it's years later, you wake up and you realize that statement has outlived the verified record. Okay, well, this story does not begin this year. It doesn't begin last year. This story begins in 2023, when a statement entered official circulation that, according to the documentary record now available, should have triggered immediate clarification. At first, it looked small, contained, administratively correctable, right? A sentence, a line in a report, a paraphrase being passed along. But over time, that sentence, has migrated from police documentation to administrative communication to a licensing review. A couple of them, actually, to an employment consequence. And every time it moved, it gained a little more institutional weight. It's not a story about disagreement. It's not a story about repeated correction being requested and not acted upon over time and time again, even though those things did kind of happen. Not once, not twice, but again and again and again and again, and Bueller. So, and the reason you're hearing this now in this form is because after years of inaction, the government made an observable choice. Not to fix it, not to clarify it, not to document any investigation, right? But to stand behind the record as it existed. So, I know you guys heard a lot about it, but because, we're going into this court season with McCann and the whole situation, and he's now represented by Rosenbaum. He's come back to the forefront here. We're going to talk about, the false escalation that he did. And, it begins, like I said, back in 23, when language entered that official circulation. And based on the record, it didn't reflect the scope of the underlying police documentation as it then existed. At first it didn't look, catastrophic. It looked small. Like I said, it seemed correctable. It was just some lines in a report. Mainly could have been clarified through phone call or an email. But that never happened. And then the sentence started to move. It moved from police documentation all the way over to the other side of things over at the courts. So Tim Weitzel gets it. And then also my boss gets it. A licensing board complaint goes out. And what separates this misunderstanding from, institutional transmission is a misunderstanding gets corrected, right? This never did. Still hasn't. Between 23 and 25, this same issue surfaced multiple times through the informal correction efforts, records disputes, direct written challenges to the language being attributed to me. Each time the same result followed. No internal review was documented. No written correction was issued. No investigative finding was released. By the time you hear what happened next, this was already the third separate formal attempt across multiple years to correct the same disputed statement before it fully hardened into institutional fact. And that changes the character of this case. Excuse me. Because the moment correction is denied repeatedly over time, the issue stops being an error, right? And it just becomes a policy of an action. Now, according to the underlying report, the police report that you see on the incident that occurred, a Lieutenant Tim Thompson, he recorded concerned multiple individuals in buildings. Basically, he was concerned about me, and apparently he told the chief that I had been admittedly told him that I'd been trespassed from multiple buildings, right? And McCann took some of that and went with it. That was the documented scope. That's where the paper trail begins. And then what later reached licensing review was not presented in that, in the scope. Somewhere between departmental, documentation and the administrative transmission, the meaning broadened. So what had been narrow became absolute. What had been limited became total. And that shift followed me directly into my profession. That's exactly how reputational damage becomes administrative weaponry. So at that point, I believe, like what most people would believe, that if the government errors pointed out professionally and with documentation, it can be corrected. So that's what I did. I believe this came from mistaken identity. Apparently if it's to be believed, and I don't know if I can believe anything they say anymore, but shortly after the event occurred at City Hall that led to this statement being made, Mayor Bradley had told me that they had apparently mistaken me for someone else, they claim. The problem is that, I never said that to whoever this person is, that I had been trespassed from other public buildings in other states. And so McCann transmitted that to my board as I admitted that I, had been trespassed from other states. And that's probably why I had moved so often. Not that, I got accepted to OSU for school, right? So on September 8th, I transmitted a written verification and correction request to the city council. I sent it to, some news people like the Lorraine Daily, Mike Mason, Noel Williams, Channel 19, Cleveland Scene, about 20 other recipients. And, here's what it, sort of reflects in substance. Like in one of Chief McCann's emails to my licensing board, he stated that Lieutenant Tim Thompson told him that I had been trespassed from other public buildings. That I asked if Lieutenant Thompson would, had, either ever made that statement, or if he could give me some sort of simple written clarification on how this became about, because I never talked to him. I never asked him. I simply said, can you guys go talk to him and figure out what happened here? Why is he saying I said this? Because I didn't. You can't lie on a report. So I asked him to check it out. Got no clarification. I got no disavowal. I got nothing. No correction. The altered phrasing remains alive today in official channels. They're still talking about, like, he still said that. It still went to my board. It still went out in emails. This was a police officer lying in a report that McCann took and fed. I initially thought it was just BS. Like, I thought he just made somebody up. Tim Thompson, like Lieutenant Tim Thompson. Really? Like, come on. I was like, why did you just call him John Smith? But sorry, my bad. He really does exist. And so weeks later, on November 26th, I escalated that informal verification request to a formal citizen misconduct complaint, because at this point, there was no longer any confusion. It had gone on uncorrected for basically ever. Nobody would address the fact that supposedly Tim said this to McCann. Now, it would have been easy enough to throw McCann under the bus, and he could have said, I never said that. But they've never said he never said it. They've never said he said it. They just let it sit in the record, uncorrected, disputed inside an official document with professional consequences. The subject line reflected, that it concerned a formal complaint regarding a false statement in a report attributed to McCann and Lieutenant Tim Thompson. Now, in that complaint, I formally disputed the accuracy of the quotation attributed to me. I stated I had never been trespassed from any public building, or any building for that matter, really, and never had made such a claim to Lieutenant Thompson or any other officer, right? That matters because it formally challenges the integrity of the official record itself. Like, materially misrepresented me, because I said I'm disputing it. It materially misrepresents me. It created an inaccurate official record, and it constituted potential misconduct. Then I requested what every police department publicly claims it welcomes: a formal investigation into the origin of the disputed statement, correction of the official report, when confirmation that the complaint had been received and would be reviewed, notification of the outcome once completed. I also added that I was prepared to provide a written statement or participate in the interview. Then, December 2nd, at 10:01 a.m., I got an email from the law director's office. It had been referred up to them, and it basically, they replied not with an investigation notice, not with a referral, but not with any clarifying questions, just a reply that stated the requests were rejected. No statute was cited, no city code was cited, no departmental policy was cited, no appeal mechanism was identified. Police departments don't normally reject citizen misconduct complaints without investigation. They investigate them, they issue findings. A flat rejection without documented process is not disciplinary review. It's procedural termination. 41 minutes later, I transmitted a notice of intent to escalate the citizen complaint, copying the Ohio auditor, state, the attorney general, Cleveland scene, 20 other people. In that notice, I wrote, no law, city rule, or policy had been cited to justify the rejection of my complaint. I stated that the department rules require that complaints alleging improper, unethical, or unprofessional conduct be investigated, right? That the complainant be informed of the outcome. I formally requested that the complaint be forwarded to a neutral, independent, investigative authority due to the conflict of interest concern. And I demanded written confirmation that the complaint had been forwarded, including the name of the agency, the date it was received, and any assigned file number. I preserved all escalation rights in writing and stated that if the office failed to comply within 10 business days, I'd escalate through a civilian oversight and state oversight authorities and pursue available legal remedies. 1 minute later, the Ohio auditor's little automated thing acknowledged receipt. Cities didn't issue any correction. No investigation was documented. The altered statement still remains in place. And, I know that that's minor. In the grand scheme of things, this one's minor. The way I look at it, though, is it was one of the start of the whole thing. Like, if he mistook me for someone else from the get-go, his involvement, Swanger's involvement, all the things that they said to McCann, if any of it was based off of another individual, it does. It formulates the way people see you moving forward from that way, forward. And that was back in 23. And I just, I mean, I feel like that's the point that like a functioning system would have like paused, hit the brakes a little, reviewed, clarified, maybe repaired itself, right? But instead, what happened was the doors just slammed shut. Once the doors closed at city level, the case just moved upward, right? Now, further on down the line, this is where the case meets, the pavement, right? We got Silo Hall, Nietzsche, and this legal wall of what feels like containment. By the time the matter reached the prosecutor and the sheriff, it was no longer new, unclear, developing. It was 2 years old, right? Like, I'd been trying to get something done for 2 years. Nothing happened. But then finally, when McCann was like, oh, or retired or whatever he did, I suddenly had access to these emails that they had been claiming for years didn't exist. Didn't exist. And then suddenly they're like, so 2 years of an uncorrected record, 2 years of an administrative transmission, 2 years of professional consequence. By 2025, the matter had already fully exited municipal administrative channels and entered the realm of criminal referral and constitutional injury. On January 28th of 25, a formal citation or criminal investigation referral packet was transmitted to the prosecutor, Attorney Solo, and Sheriff Jack Hall. This was not commentary. This was not political speech. This was a mature criminal referral supported by a 2-year factual timeline, the city's documented refusal to investigate, the administrative transmission history, the licensing and employment impact, the linkage between the disputed statement and the economic harm. The packet explicitly requested outside agency investigation, criminal review, and charging considerations. Under ordinary prosecutorial standards, that referral requires one of three outcomes: a declination, a referral to another jurisdiction, or confirmation that an investigation has been opened. None of those things have occurred. No declination has been issued. No referral confirmation has been provided. No investigation was ever acknowledged. Weeks passed. February 1925, the same packet was transmitted directly to Mr. Anthony Nietzsche, the legal affairs guy for the sheriff's department, right? And he acknowledged receipt. Still, no investigation, confirmation, no declination, no timeline, no explanation, just nothing. At that point, the referral was no longer lost in the system. It was just sitting inside it. It was sitting inside the prosecutor's office, the sheriff's office, the sheriff's legal affairs and internal oversight gatekeeper, and nothing moved. That's when the silence, stops being administrative. That's when it becomes institutional containment, folks. Right there. Right then. After weeks and months and all this of non-response, I made direct contact with Prosecutor Silla. Multiple attempts were intercepted by his office. Like, I call, my calls go unanswered. No written status response is produced. But eventually I reached him directly. And I'm challenging myself on how I responded to this without. But the bottom line is he got on the phone with me and was not nice. I mean, again, I'm not the nicest person in the world either when you've been a jerk to me. So it started out with basically him. I had to call. I called like a bunch of times in a row because they weren't answering their phone during normal business hours, as they never do. It always goes to voicemail. And so this day I'd had enough. And so I called a bunch of times in a row to Billy Joe Belcher's phone number, I guess, because that's whoever was at the desk. But she was on vacation. So on this particular day, I guess Mr. Solo got upset with me and decided to call me back. And then he hung up on me. But in that process, he also said, you don't get to speak to my employees the way that you speak to them. And I was like, well, they're not your employees. They're the county's employees. And I will speak to them however I see fit. You guys are all government servants. And he hung up on me. And, he was like, are you going to, and he called back a little bit later when my daughter was in the car. Are you calm down now? And I was like, well, I was never uncalm. I just don't know why you're trying to tell me how to speak. So, I'm not going to get into the details of that conversation, but we went back and forth for a while. And, it wasn't the prettiest of things. And basically the argument is somehow, just like with Ray Carrion, I don't deserve service because I've been mean to other people. So when Ray said on my front porch, he says, it's the asker, not the ask. All right. So I get it. I'm an asshole. So you don't get police service. You can get bit by a dog and we won't do a damn thing about it. But then, and when your neighbor, who at the time was a cop in another town, says, well, when the dog gets out again, can we shoot it? The cops were like, oh, no, that's bad. You can't just shoot a dog in the middle of the street. And then like 5 days later, that's exactly what Elliot Palmer did. And so, the hypocrisy was right. I literally just can't fathom the fact that they just can't figure out anything. I don't get any help there. And so Tony's telling me, basically, you're mean to my people. So why would we do anything for you? He didn't say that outright, but that's the insinuation. He's basically saying prosecution for you is going to have to be, if you're not nice, you're not going to get anything. I mean, they know that the case is fully developed. They know that there's a legal cause there. That's why they've all been passing it around. No one's ever denied it. I mean, Jack Hall literally read it and was like in agreement that the law was broken before he was the sheriff. Candidate Jack Hall had it before he became Sheriff Jack Hall. And then Sheriff Jack Hall got it. And then prosecutor still has it, And the problem was, I was calling all those times because at this point, the judge had ordered back during the summer that this was to go to a prosecutorial review. And then I hear nothing. Every time I try to contact them, they silence me. Well, the reason they did that was, for a fact, one reason only. And they did it because they didn't want me, like, I went around them, basically. I took the file to the courts, and I had the courts write a I'm not going to bore you guys with the process, but basically I went to the courts and I filed my own criminal complaint. You don't need the prosecutor and the sheriff. It helps. It really does. And you would think, after the amount of ass I kissed to the sheriff, like I could have at least gotten an investigation, but no, they didn't want to oblige me. I got a nasty email. So I went to the court, and I got, I think it's Judge Elwell or Ewers. I don't know. Garen will always correct me. The county one, I think it's Elwell. He signs it and sends it on up to Tony, and then they just ignore it. Well, of course they ignored it, because they ignored it when I gave it to him. The sheriff ignored it when I gave it to him twice. I mean, and his office had already had it, and J.D. Tomlinson's office had already had it, and every one of them pushed it off onto somebody else. Tomlinson's office pushed it off because of what happened there. Burge told in the letter to Van Sant that it fell on the law department. The law department said it fell on the county. It's just this pass it around. And then eventually it falls to Ray Carey, on the first guy that told me my services were dependent on who I was after I'd been bit by a dog. And basically, when he was a councilman, and then 6 months later, he's on the investigative team that's investigating me after I've already had all the information given to me by him. Oh, you're killing me. Yeah, Ewers. I knew he would do it. So eventually I reached him directly. I got a hold of Tony, and I was like, yo, I asked one procedural question. What is the status of the criminal referral? And his response, it wasn't legal. Felt a little personal, He was like, further engagement was affected by how I speak to people. I mean, it's kind of constitutionally significant because prosecutorial access cannot be conditioned on temperament. I can be an asshole. You still got to review the case. Criminal review cannot be withheld based on my tone. That's viewpoint discrimination, and it applies to access to state process. You would know that. I mean, you're a lawyer and a county prosecutor. I know you terminated the call, And then when you called back, you indicated that you were going to return my call either Friday or Monday. Well, that was like 3 weeks ago. I haven't heard back from him. No phone call. I called today. I was not nice. I dropped an F-bomb. And I don't care because that's constitutionally protected language. If I want to say, why can't you fucking call me back? This is just how I express myself. So again, no return call from my elected representative. No return call from a duly representative of, a representative of the, the branch that's supposed to prosecute, send people to court. Earlier in this cycle, I had reached out to Sheriff Hall. He placed his refusal straight up in writing. He stated during that time before I went to the court, he stated he had no obligation to update me on the status of any investigation conducted by his office. Got it in an email. He didn't confirm whether any investigation existed. He didn't deny if one existed. He just refused to confirm either. At a later point, when I get a judicial officer, Evers, to come and issue an order directing this matter be investigated, no publicly traceable investigation still has followed. Yet magically, during the same time frame, magic! Oh my God, it's magic! During the same time frame, Tony and his prosecutors have actively litigated unrelated matters involving me. They've litigated public record denials and just continue to do that. They continue with their clears exemptions. They continue with, slowly producing privilege logs that we had to ask for. Procedural defenses are filed. On one track, the institution moved. On the other, it remained completely still. The contrast is not coincidence, folks. It's just not. Like, it's bullshit. That's all I know. Is I'm just feeling like no matter what we do, it's just
bullshit.
Because an office cannot litigate is not incapacitated. I'm sorry. An office that can litigate is not incapacitated. So if you can litigate against me in all of these other fashions, right, then you're not incapable of dealing with complaints. An office that can file, argue, and defend is not frozen by workload. This is selective non-enforcement by the prosecutor's office in Tony Sillo. And selective non-enforcement under color of law is an equal protection injury. That's it. I mean, like, it's definitively a problem. And if you want to know what happens when those types of things happen, color of law, well, if you'd have bothered to investigate Chief McCann's or ex-Chief McCann's case that I sent you multiple times, you would realize what it was. And you realize it's not an area you want to trifle with me in. I don't care if people certain people out there want to run their yaps about me. I'm not out here to be loved by everybody. I'm out here to do what I do. And, the bottom line is that this has gone on for quite some time, folks. There's been no denial. The disputed statement was entered official circulation in 23. The city rejected the investigation, even though they were supposed to do one. Then the law director blocked escalation. The prosecutor absorbed the referral without action. Then they managed to pull out some sort of an investigation with Carry On at its lead. But literally, it was supposed to be into James McCann, and the investigation was literally titled Knapp Investigation. I mean, get the fuck out of here. Really? Like, you couldn't even be bothered to hide it and put like Knapp McCann, Knapp complaint, Knapp investigation. And that's what it was when you look at the timeline. It was everything I had supposedly done in their eyes. And it went all the way up to the prosecutor's office when JD was there. And JD's little clowns and goons, Resendez's little crew, kicked me out. Now, I know it's going to be funny when I get to the end and I kind of shift tone. You guys are going to laugh because I've kind of been hitting on JD a little hard here. But the sheriff refused to confirm the investigation. Legal affairs logged possession without movement, right? A judge's order produced no visible execution. I wonder how Judge Illwell feels about that. He issued an order 4 or 5 months ago, and they've done nothing. Nothing. They're like, hey, you know what, Judge? We see you wrote this order, but fuck off. I'm the prosecutor. I'm Tony fucking Sillo. I don't fucking listen to judges. I do what I want, right? I mean, hey, who gives a fuck what Judge Cannon said about JD's exoneration of Nancy Smith, right? I'm Tony fucking Sillo. I do what I fucking want. I'm the prosecuting fucking attorney of Lorain motherfucking County. Yeah. Let me get a hat and turn that shit sideways, folks. Because that's what he's acting like. Like he's a gangster running this shit. I get it. You're the duly elected prosecutor of Lorain County. You're welcome. You're very, very welcome. Because I don't care what anybody says. You don't win that election without me. And the only reason you got my services was because Jack asked me about the stuff with Resendez. And Resendez just came along with Tomlinson at the time. That's going to bring us into talking about little Nancy Smith here. Again, because that's my new mantra. Everything you've heard, in Acts 1 and 2 just shows you what this system looks like when it actually decides not to move, right? Now I'm going to show you what that same system looks like when it decides that it very much wants to move. Because the Constitution does not only protect people from abuse, right? It exposes abuse through contrast. And nothing reveals selective enforcement faster than watching how aggressively the state moves against one target while freezing when the target is one of its own. All right. And I'm going to pause right there for station identification because we're going to get into this final part of this podcast here real quick. But I would like to give a shout out to my sponsors real quick before we finish up this last one. So just give me 1 second here, folks, and we'll be right back with you.
Here at Unplugged with Aaron Knapp, we like to thank our sponsors. We have a few unofficial sponsors tonight, and they are definitely not paid sponsorships. I want to throw out there a big thank you to Joseph Jones and Eric Jones of the Lorain Daily and the Vermilion Daily. They have a local news page. You should check them out. They do plenty of great work broadcasting all the news that is the news that you want to have in Lorain and Lorain County. So check them out. Also, please, if you need any legal services, feel free to reach out to Robert Gargas. You can find him listed online. He's a fine attorney and comes highly recommended by yours truly. And last but not least, I want to mention DNC Radio. Please make sure you check out one of the up-and-coming internet hip-hop stations and all of their shows. They put on a lot of shows. You have the Never Outdone show. You also have the Eric Bowen show, Speak Up, Speak Out. So please make sure you guys check them out as well if you're looking for your latest and up-to-date hip-hop artistry. Thank you for tuning in.
All right, guys. That'll be the last one there. The only one of this one. Because this isn't going to be a super long podcast tonight. It's just going to be a standard-sized one. But, like I was saying, nothing reveals selective enforcement faster than watching how aggressively the state will move after one of its own. And I'm just going to... I wasn't really... this was more supposed to be about county and narcissistically a little bit about me and my situation and also leaning a little bit into Amber's situation. But I want to point out a few other side points here. Look at Rivera. All right, we just found out today that he got a failure to control that was dismissed. And basically got a $200 fine and some minor driving infraction for drunkenly smashing into 2 cars in a shed. I mean, again, I know people have been saying lately, oh, Aaron hates cops, Aaron hates cops. I don't. Like, back in California, a lot of my friends were cops. I actually, all of my degree prior to my social work degree was in law enforcement training classes and all of that, right? And yet, I moved to Ohio, and you managed to turn a guy that would have been back the blue into no. And that's because of your own actions. You've consistently shown me to be less than in Lorraine. And these aren't problems that happen in a lot of these other areas. Granted, I get it. There is a lot of random stuff going on in a lot of areas out there, but you have no further to look than what happened with Rivera, what happened with Tabitha, what happened with Palmer, what happened with McCann, what happened all the way through all of these different individuals. My question would be is, where does the fault lie? Does it lie in training? Does it lie in leadership? Does it lie in recruitment? Does it lie in education? Does it lie in psychological evaluations? But somehow, some way, they've managed to create something that's been festering here, and it needs to be taken care of. And I don't care if you hate me for saying it, but my daughter's going to have to live here long after I'm dead. And the grand scheme of things, that might be sooner rather than later if some of you have your own way about it. But oh well. All I can do is live the life that I'm supposed to live. And, you guys will beat me up over a night of me getting my ass beat. But you'll let Sergeant Rivera crash into 2 cars in a shed and get nothing. Nothing. There's not one soul out there. I'm sorry. Not even Tony DeMacchia would get away with what Rivera got away with. I'm sorry. He fled the scene of an accident and you didn't charge him with that? I mean, you guys can't charge anyone else ever for that. Okay, I get it. He got away because he got home and whatever. He told you a bunch of lies because he's a cop. And he told them to you guys that I'm supposed to respect. And you bought it. He got special treatment going to the hospital. And in the grand scheme of things, when I saw what Carissa wrote today about the charges or the lack thereof, I mean, you didn't even try to charge him with the fleeing the scene of a felony accident. Any of us do that and we're screwed. Oh, and then you want to brag in the newspaper? He's paid back $1,000 of the $15,000. That was just the car, folks. That was only the car. Nothing else, nothing more, nothing less, just the car. Not the other 2 cars, not the property damage, not the shed damage, which I guarantee you those people didn't get crap. But he's paid back $1,000. What's the dude make? $90,000, $190,000 a year? I mean, you demoted him. Did you take his pay down with it? Hey, Garen, that's a good thing to ask for. We need to see what his current pay is when they demoted him. Did they demote his pay or did they just demote him? Did he go from being Sergeant Rivera with Sergeant Rivera's pay to Officer Rivera with Sergeant Rivera's pay? And then they said he can't be promoted for 3 years? Oh, boo fucking who. I mean, I swear to God. Like, everybody was like, how did Aaron get home? How did Aaron get home? Everyone's like, oh my God, DeMacchia was at a gas pump and was drinking. Oh my God, Joanne Moon was drinking. Oh my God, Angel Arroyo, he got drunk and did a bunch. Well, okay, maybe Angel not the best of descriptions here because Angel kind of did some crazy stuff too. But he still didn't hit 2 cars. I mean, he didn't flee the scene of an accident. And then listening to him in that ops interview where he's like, I just thought, oh shit, oh yeah. Oh shit, oh fuck, I just threw away my entire career. But no, you didn't because, back the blue, right? And I said something today that I thought I'd never say. But I posted it with that story. I kind of regret it, but I'm going to leave it up because it's what I do. I said, fuck the blue no matter who, I guess. That's how you're making me feel. You guys are breaking my heart every damn day.
You want me to cry for you and weep for you and spend money on drones for you and make sure you have the best body armor and the best weapons, because they couldn't do that for us in the military, right? Our parents were sending us money to buy the body armor back when I was in. But hey, you do you. You got all the best of everything. You guys got all these vehicles. You got everything, right? And the one time you had the chance to stand up and be decent fucking cops, the one time that I thought of all the times that you would do it, it was obvious. And even if it wasn't obvious, I've seen you guys stretch less obvious into more obvious so many damn times, it's not even funny. The fact that you didn't even try. You swept this bullshit under the rug. You gave him a $200 fine. You charged him for the car. You demoted him and said, all is fucking forgiven. I want to know what I gotta do to get that kind of treatment from them. That arguably, I mean, like, the only thing worse he could have done was hit somebody. And even then, that might have been like, wow, he was tired. Yawn. Give me a break. Anyway, but nothing reveals selective enforcement faster than showing how aggressively the state will move against, one target while freezing out another. And that's where Nancy Smith really enters the story. Nancy Smith's family has existed inside the Lorain County justice system for more than 3 decades, right? That's 30 years. For you McCanns out there. 30 years of prosecutions, 30 years of appeals, right? That's 3 decades. 30 years of filings, 30 years of institutional pressure, 30 years of accusations that were never allowed to fully die. Sound familiar, right? I mean, well, my case is sitting in silence. Hers is never heard silence. Nancy and her daughter, Amber, have been hearing screaming in their ears the entire time for 30 years. This is a psychological warfare. This is some shit the CIA would do. This is not an attack on just Nancy Smith. And it's not a commentary on her guilt or her innocence. Or this is not an attack on Nancy Smith or a commentary on her guilt or innocence, right? This is just structural contrast for you guys to understand exactly where I'm coming from here. They won't go after a case that's obvious, that hasn't seen one investigation, let alone 30 years of investigations. But you've got this where they're going back after her and her daughter again for like the 5 millionth time. When the subject is a civilian family like Nancy Smith, the system, it didn't stall, right? It didn't await clarification. It didn't consult with the media. It doesn't issue silence. It doesn't freeze. It files. It charges. It litigates. It resurfaces old matters. It applies continuous pressure to the point where it breaks people for decades. Same prosecutor's office, right? You can't generate a case number or a declination letter when a police chief is accused, has shown relentless institutional motion when the target is a civilian family. Relentless. And again, I wonder why. I mean, again, I haven't gotten so deep into all those connections, but I know that there's a lot. And that's not speculation. That's institutional history, folks. That's ingrained, embedded into the fabric of Lorain County. Listen to the symmetry. In my case, city rejects investigation. Law director blocks referral. Prosecutor absorbs referral. Sheriff refuses confirmation. Legal affairs freezes the file. Judicial instruction produces no visible execution. Nancy Smith's world. Filings continue. Appeals propagate. Prosecutorial energy never, ever, ever, ever sunsets. I mean, I imagine, and again, the 4 years, I'm going to say this again. No, I know the irony. I really do. I'll admit it. I know the irony.
that the institutional pressure never pauses. But the only time Amber, this is why last summer she was roller skating and having fun and acting like a child, because there was no fear of future prosecution by the prosecuting attorney. I mean, honestly, I think if you guys would have sold this story a little bit more, he'd still probably be in office, because nobody would have listened to anything I had to say. Ugh. What am I looking at now, Garen? Oh. Holy crap. And in 2020, Eric Rivera made $100,717.86. I imagine that number's only gone up, right? That's insanity. But as I was saying, in Nancy's case, the filings continue, the appeals propagate. This energy never, ever, ever sunsets. The institutional pressure that's on her never pauses. The system never forgets. Same county, same courts, same prosecutor's office, same constitutional framework, right? You can pick up a phone to yell at me, but you can't pick up a phone to actually take a case. You can pick up a phone to tell me how to speak, but you can't pick up a phone to call and get somebody a little bit of relief, to do your job, to have, I don't know, the victim advocates call people and reassure them. No. Radically different behavior. That contrast isn't procedural, guys. It's discretionary. It's political. It's exactly what 42 U.S.C. 1983 exists to expose. Because 1983 is not about bad outcomes, right? It's never been about bad outcomes. It's about abuse of power under color of law. Not bad outcomes, bad actors. And abuse under color of law is not proven, not by shouting conspiracy, but by tracking who the system consistently pursues and who the system consistently protects. Okay? I'm gonna say that again for the people in the back. An abuse under color of law is proven not by shouting conspiracy, but by tracking who the system consistently pursues and who the system consistently protects. Silence is not neutral. Okay, it's not. Silence is protective. When a prosecutor does nothing after receiving a mature criminal referral involving a police chief who already had his own problems, and that was given to him, prior to that, the choice he makes is not to do anything, and that protects the chief. When a sheriff refuses to even confirm whether an investigation exists, that choice protects the chief. When legal affairs freezes a file without movement, that choice protects, you guessed it, the chief, folks, the chief.
A bullshit.
Meanwhile, the target is a civilian family.
A bullshit.
And it's say Amber Smith, it's mom Nancy Smith. Then then it's okay. We can just go after anytime we want. And hey, Jack Bradley, he worked for her, and I feel like Jack Bradley.
I'm in a public area, bro.
He worked for her, right?
You can't continue with the meeting because you won't exit.
And that's not my problem. You work for me.
I don't work for you.
You do work for me. I pay taxes. You work for the city of Lorraine. No, there's no agree to disagree.
Oh, that's right. You don't work for me. You don't work for her. You never did, apparently. But okay, that's fine. They're pursuing them. That's not discretion, folks. You look at it however you want. It's selective with impact. And it's in constitutional law, impact is everything. Everything. Like, impact is everything. Because the injury here is not only emotional, right? It's not only reputational. It's not only economic. It's the denial of equal access to state process, folks. That's it. I need to explain where I personally intersect this whole machinery, because up to now I've deliberately kind of kept myself structurally outside the frame. And yeah, Garen's saying he got a big raise a couple years later, but that's going to change here, okay? Like, I am going to let you guys in on a little secret. Well, I mean, I kind of talked about it a little bit, but this is going to kind of explain it. And that's why this is going to change here real quick. So, you know what? Right before I just need to say, like, when the SF-400 document that surfaced showing Rich Resendez's appointment as a so-called special police officer in Lorraine, it had like major statutory questions that arose out of whether he had even legally qualified to seek the office of sheriff under Ohio law. All right. Get ready for this. This needs to be stated clearly and precisely for the record. I did not author the statutory analysis. I did not construct the peace officer eligibility argument. I did not write the legal framework. According to the documentary Email Trail, that statutory conflict analysis was authored and vetted by none other than candidate Jack Hall when he was still running for office. I have the email. That same documentation shows that Hall then transmitted the completed statutory analysis to me with instructions on how it needed to be publicly transmitted. And I transmitted it. Not as the author, as the envelope. That act matters because for a period of time, I functioned. I want you guys to hear this. I functioned as a transmission conduit inside an internal power struggle that was already underway. Like many people, I was kind of used up in that. So let's move to German Villa, all right? We're at German Villa, Jack's, swearing in party or whatever. It's after the election. After all the inaugurations and speeches and the crowds and, outside German Villa, no microphones, no cameras, no crowd energy. There was just one private conversation between me, Jack, and I think somebody else he was leaving with. But, and that's where I was told directly that there would be a legitimate, unbiased investigation into Chief James McCann. Not optics, not narrative management, not political theater, an investigation. That representation did not occur in a vacuum, right? It followed the Resendez transmission, the statutory conflict exposure, the internal realignment of power, the public pressure. At that moment, I was not viewed as an adversary like I am now. I wasn't cast aside like the piece of shit they cast me aside when that whole Tia Hilton thing came. I was important. They shook my hand. They came over and talked to me. They slipped me information from the jail. They told me about stuff that was going on. They gave me everything I used. And arguably, as Aiden Fogel once said, and I think he was the big one saying it, that they were using me. And I kind of knew they were. I just didn't realize the extent. But at that moment, I wasn't viewed as an adversary, right? I was a friend. I was an ally. And more importantly to them, I was a conduit. That's the part of the story that matters the most, okay? The whole Resendez thing, it moved on, right? He ended up, I think, working for McCann for a little while. But that whole thing burned out. He lost. Tomlinson faced renewed investigative exposure, though, right? Tomlinson kept getting hit even after he got out of office. Civilians continued to face rapid denials and swift action in court. But not McCann never entered visible accountability, not once. Records slowed, investigations stalled, authority insulated. And right here is where the entire series stops being about individuals and becomes that architecture. Who gets investigated? Is it me? Is it Garen? Is it JD? You know, who is it? Who gets insulated? Who becomes radioactive? Duran. Who remains pocketed? You can all think of a lot of people like that. I mean, I'm sorry, and who remains protected. But for a time, I was a useful messenger, folks, up until that transmission began moving upwards instead of sideways. And that's when my position in the whole system changed. Because no system reacts accidentally, right? It reacts in defense. And once you strip the names away, what remains is not a conspiracy, folks. It's structure. It's walls, it's doors, it's insulation, and designated targets. And if you're still listening at this point in the story, you already understand that this was never about tone or temperament or personalities. It was about where power allows investigation to go and where it does not. The case no longer belongs only to me. The case now belongs to the question of whether the law applies equally to all. When the system refuses to move against its own, but never stops moving against the civilians, us, the people, it creates two classes. Those who are investigated and those who are insulated. Those who are charged, those who are given slaps on the wrist, like Rivera. That's not justice, people. That is a caste. And a caste of people, and not a good one. Not the kind of movie cast you see, but the kind they describe in the medieval times. Caste, king, queen, the royalty. They are the royalty. They sit upon their thrones and they look down on you like you're some sort of piece of crap that they rule over. Aaron can't know anything about the law. Aaron can't understand the way that we wrote this gun law. Aaron doesn't understand that it is, even if it is slightly unconstitutional, it's for safety. Aaron doesn't understand. I just don't get it, you know. But later, a judge ordered that this matter be investigated. That order exists, folks. I still have it. In Nancy Smith's world, judicial orders produce filings, hearings, rulings, and enforcement. In my world, the judicial instruction appears and disappears into executive silence. Same courtroom architecture, right? Same place. Same attorneys, same prosecuting attorney, same district attorney, same courtroom architecture, same building, same judges, different obedience. This entire saga began with a single sentence that never should have survived the record. A sentence that moved without verification, a sentence that professionalized harm, a sentence that would have that would have been corrected instantly if the subject were not inconvenient, me. Instead, the city rejected investigation, the law director blocked escalation, the prosecutors absorbed referral, the sheriff refused confirmation, legal affairs froze the file, and a judge's order produced no visible execution. I mean, Judge Elwell put out that order to investigate, and Tony and Jack just were like, fuck it, right? Who cares? No visible execution, folks. If I'm the judge, I'm mad. I did the proper thing. I followed the machinery. I wrote it the way I was supposed to. You know, the guy that's just a big pain in the butt that nobody likes. So I said Ewers, didn't I? Or I said Elwell again. All right, Ewers. Like, Sorry, I didn't mean to give it to the wrong person. It's Ewers. Anyway, but Ewers' order produced no visible execution. Yeah, I know, right? I'm sitting here like saying nobody respects his orders, and apparently Aaron doesn't respect his name. So I do apologize, Your Honor. I didn't mean to keep calling you by the wrong name. I've been dealing with some stuff in Lorraine with that other judge, and I don't mean to mix you two up. About apologies. In fact, this whole podcast does not apply to you, Judge Ewers. You're a cool dude, Your Honor, with all due respect. So again, a judge's order produced no visible execution. That's not broken machinery. That's functioning protection. Set next to 30 years of relentless pressure against a family, the constitutional injuries, they become unmistakable. This is not one failure. This is design. Failure by friggin' design, folks. And I don't think it's it's not a coincidence that all of these people are tied together, right? Not a coincidence that you see these names together, that you see all the same names together. I mean, I don't think it's a coincidence that, McCann's attorney on this case is Rosenbaum, the very attorney that was covering, was county prosecutor when Amber Smith's case, mom's case went through. And that same gentleman has also been usually on the side of 149.43G record request, but he's not now. And also, he must recognize that, his extensive ties to Lorraine, Jack Bradley, this case, my ties to this case to her, my ties to Berea and that case, and the fact that I was investigating that case, zero reason that he should even be on there. And again, you have to ask yourself as taxpayers, why are we paying for a lawyer for Jim McCann, who, well after his retirement date, when he's being sued personally, I'm not suing him under his job. That's what a beautiful thing in 1983 claim is. We're going to kind of brush up in here to JD now. And I know I need to correct, before I close, I need to correct the public narrative that continues to drift a little. And then I need to ask the question that nobody in authority seems willing to answer out loud, right? Publicly, as of this recording, there has been no one criminal prosecution filed against former Lorain County prosecutor J.D. Tomlinson, right? They had that one, that the case arose in October 24, that stemmed from the allegations involving a workplace relationship between him and Jim Battistelli, and the approval of $100,000 settlement from the prosecutors. I guess, I don't know if it came out, I guess they came out of the prosecutor's office budget. I know that the commissioners approved it, right? So the $100,000 comes out, it's done. Based on that handling, the Lorain County Sheriff's Office, under the prior sheriff, which was Stamiti, charged Tomlinson with tampering with evidence, intimidation, and attempted bribery. His chief of staff, Jim Burge, faced related charges. Because Tomlinson was the sitting prosecutor at the time, a special prosecutor was a visiting judge, were both appointed. And I'm just going to point out that I was a party to a lot of that. And I mean, not a party to it, because I had nothing to do with any of that, but in joining in on that, I obviously reposted stuff. I posted stories about it, because no matter what they want to say, it was news. And no matter what I say about anything else that's happened, that whole scenario, whether it was a seductress, collecting JD into her spider web like the succubus that she is, or it was a timid victim being abused by the mean prosecutor, none of it matters, because it still occurred factually. But because he was the sitting prosecutor at the time, a special prosecutor comes in, and then we've got on November 15th to 24, the charges were dismissed at the plenary stage after the key witness failed to appear twice. So, i.e. Jennifer. So the court declined to compel testimony due to the lack of proof of service. At the time, and this matters, folks, Jack Hall was not the sheriff. Tony Solo was not yet prosecutor. So then in 2025, after they both take office, Solo obviously won the election. You're welcome. And Sheriff Hall publicly confirmed that the newly formed Public Corruption Unit would be reopening the review of the Tomlinson matter. That renewed review was transferred to the Ottawa County Prosecutor James Van Gierken quite some time later, for independent charging considerations. So recently, as of December of this year, no new charges have been filed. But what kind of establishes a factual baseline? We have this dismissed prosecution, we have a reopened investigation, and right now we don't have that second indictment, but we have the warning of it. And again, you're welcome. That whole thing went down because they slipped it to the Chronicle, as they always do, right? And then they slid back over and said, "No, we're just gonna say we've got a special prosecutor." Well, arguably, I had no clues about this. I thought it might be about McCann. I thought just once, I gave into the idea that maybe they finally did the right thing. I just thought maybe like just once they would have done the right thing and they would be like totally doing the right thing. But instead, I got like just
emotional damage.
So I just, all right. I found out because I requested the files from the AG's office, who gave them to me quite a few. And so the and I got the documents from the AG's office in a records request that was legal, and they sent it to me proper, and they sent it to me properly redacted. Once I received it, I released it, and basically ruined their little surprise that they were going back after JD. And I was like, all right, I was introduced to a lot of different players during that whole time when I was with Hall, when I was with these other people. And again, all I feel now is abandonment from either or being attacked by everyone. And so again, I have nothing to hide. I have no reason to protect anyone, and I'm not going to continue to take it lying down. So, we get to this part that's not really settled by the court filings, but it's absolutely raised by public record, is why Tomlinson remains a target. There's at least, two unresolved threads that logically intersect that continues to focus on Tomlinson. First, that Battistelli litigation. Jennifer Battistelli filed that EEOC complaint and later pursued civil claims following her resignation. Those civil proceedings remain fundamentally separate from the dismissed criminal case. However, they continue to generate legal exposure, reputational pressure, and financial implications for multiple parties. One unresolved public interest question is whether or not the ongoing civil exposure, the discovery risk, or collateral litigation strategy could be influencing the sustained law enforcement focus on Tomlinson. Even after the criminal case collapsed at the preliminary stage, right? That's not an accusation. That is structural questions raised whether civil and criminal processes could run in parallel for years without resolution. The other issue I had during that time frame was, even though I liked him, Van Sant was a big dummy and was caught communicating with her. I'm just going to say, like, she keeps popping up in my friend requests and my date cycle on Facebook. I'm like, nope, left, nope, black, nope, not today, Satan. I'm not doing it. I will not be, she's taking down some great men. It wouldn't be shit for her to take down a mediocre man like me. So that is a structural question raised by whether civil and criminal processes run in parallel for years without resolution, folks. Second, the exoneration conflict, okay? Everybody wants to forget this. When Tomlinson was in office, and again, that's why I said they should have really played with this one for the win and let people really realize and understand what happened. When he was in office, now, arguably his mentor, Burge, tried to do this before, and they stymied him. But while he was in office and directly involved in decisions that resulted in exonerations, reversals, and prosecutorial setbacks in other high-impact cases, those actions do not merely affect defendants, right? They affect prior convictions, prior prosecutorial strategy, prior law enforcement credibility, and potential civil liability. Well, she's suing him, so it is civil. That raised the unavoidable public interest question. Could renewed scrutiny of Tomlinson also be entangled with retaliatory institutional exposure stemming from decisions he made that undermined or reversed earlier prosecutions, i.e. Nancy Smith? And again, that's framed as an investigative question, not an assertion. I'm not saying that's what happened, right? But now we get to Silla. Silla didn't initiate the first Tomlinson prosecution, right? That predates him. I pointed that out earlier. Nothing to do with him. But once he took office, The pattern shifted from episodic to persistent. Publicly documented actions now include a withdrawal of Tomlinson from post-conviction proceedings. So he was, involved in that, and they removed him. Escalation into a fraud on the court allegations tied to the filings made under Tomlinson's tenure. Forced removal from private representation based on prior prosecutorial conflicts. I get that one, but basically, they said you can't represent him because you once, went after him. Now, I mean, arguably though, like if you go from prosecutor to, I don't know, whatever. Anyway, if that guy feels okay with him, he's like, man, you kicked my lawyer's ass, and I want you to be my lawyer. Like the client should be able to say it. But he did that, and he went in the paper and did it, front page, right? Because it's again, it's how you do it. Make him look bad. Fraud on the court. Can't represent clients. Cooperation with broader state and federal probe structures overlapping Tomlinson's administration. Individually, any one of those actions can be defended as just discretionary crap. But collectively, they form what appears, again, just saying, appears from the outside to be a single-minded institutional fixation on J.D. Tomlinson's prior authority. This is where that motive analysis becomes unavoidable, right? Because at the same time, this sustained focus continues. The system that's shown relentless energy towards them has shown documented paralysis on McCann, silence on referral, non-execution of judicial instruction, and total insulation where power currently resides. That contrast is what creates the core public question. Why does momentum exist in only one direction? Is it about the civil liability exposure? Because you guys are getting sued by Nancy Smith and the county's going to have to fork over millions of dollars? Is it a political realigning? Parties, people, political people, and allies shifting? Or is it retaliatory institutional defense? You hurt us, we hurt you. Or protection of present-day authority structures, right? Wow, can't have these things coming down on our watch. These questions are not going to be answered by a press release. They're only going to be answered by pattern behavior across time. That's it. And the pattern so far here is unmistakable. Tomlinson remains under sustained legal and professional pressure even after the criminal dismissal. I mean, last time I checked, that whole, what were they calling it? Double jeopardy. But they're not going to go back after him for her, according to the affidavit that I received from them, the AG's office, that was sent to the prosecutor guy over in Ottawa County, was that they were looking at him into that whole thing where it was, the whole dishonesty aspect of things. I don't know. But now then you get to McCann. He was the sitting chief tied to my own referral, and he's never entered visible accountability at all. Not once. He retired and nothing. And then he gets Rosenbaum, the prosecutor guy on the Nancy Smith case, as his lawyer. Okay. Whatever. And it just so happens that Jack Bradley was her lawyer, and then Jack Bradley's also voting with Ray Carrion to approve this guy to be her lawyer. You guys want me to believe all these people don't like each other, and everybody keeps talking about that, but they all sure seem to be like kissing cousins to me. Anyway, that's for another day. That's not, but then again, this is not a comment on guilt. It's a comment on direction of force. I want to end this, where accountability actually lives, though. It's not about personal loyalty to anybody, especially not Tomlinson. This isn't about party affiliation, Republican, Democrat. It's not about personality. This is about who the system pursues relentlessly and who the system refuses to touch. Because justice is not measured by how aggressively the law moves when it's politically convenient. Justice is measured by whether it moves when it is institutionally uncomfortable. Justice is measured by whether it moves when it is institutionally uncomfortable. That's what I'm saying. And right now, that's the only reason that this still matters, folks. Oh boy. And I'm going to give a final thought here after this, but I want to read this out real quick for my own purposes, legally. This episode is an investigative journalism, public records analysis, and protected open opinion commentary. It is not legal advice. All allegations are reported as alleged unless and until established by adjudication. All names individuals retain the presumption of innocence. This reporting is produced in the public interest for transparency and civic accountability. My name is Aaron Knapp. This is Unplugged. You can find me at www.aaronknappunplugged.com. And remember, sunlight is always uncomfortable to someone. My final thought here is this is systematic, folks. At some point, after you follow enough trails long enough, the strange thing starts to happen. And I've been traveling these trails for a while now, as you know. The names start to matter less than the behavior. The titles start to matter less than the reactions. And the individual controversies stop looking like isolated storms and start looking like weather patterns. Because when you zoom out far enough, what you see is not chaos. What you see is consistency. You see a system that behaves when challenged, when it's challenged from below. You see how it behaves when one of its own is implicated, right? You see how people like Rivera are treated. I know I'm going to irk some people, but you saw a trial today. A man was paralyzed. That guy did no wrong. Okay, I see you. I feel you. But yet, anyway, I just don't understand, like, how, you see people sitting in cars at gas pumps and they get off and, a person brings an open container into a building, but then another person has a firearm off site and that reacts different. You guys are nothing but contradictions. I just, you end up seeing how fast that it moves when pressure is politically safe, and completely how it freezes when pressure is institutionally dangerous. City level, county level, commissioners, law directors, prosecutors, sheriffs, courts, different offices, same responses. It's the same responses in and out every time. And all you ever hear from these people.
Bullshit.
I don't know. Like, at the city level, a disputed statement will enter the record, right? Corrections requested, documentations provided, formal complaints filed, response, no review, just reject. At county level, a criminal referral is transmitted, a mature packet, 2 years of record, documented harm, judicial instruction. The response is not declination, it's silence. At the prosecutorial level, energy exists, but only in one direction. Filings happen, motions happen, defenses happen, public records are denied, privileges asserted, but when the subject of the inquiry is the police chief of Lorraine, the machinery that never seems to sleep suddenly can't move. Suddenly it's night time, and the sheriff's office confirmation itself becomes off limits. Not yes, not no, just no obligation to say. At the judicial level, an order exists, but execution evaporates once it reaches the executive branch. Same courthouse, different gravity. And at the commissioner level, the pattern repeats again and 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 again. Midway Mall, Midway Mall, Midway Mall, Midway Mall, Midway Mall, New Russia, New Russia, New Russia, New Russia, New Russia. Elyria Township, Elyria Township, Elyria Township. Same names. Riddell, Gallagher, Moore. Riddell, Gallagher, Moore. Riddell, Gallagher, Moore. Conflicts treated as an inconvenience. Oversights treated as hostility. Across every layer, the same rule emerges. Pressure downward is procedural. Pressure upwards is radioactive. This is the part that's the hardest for people to swallow. Systems like this do not require conspiracy. So for people out there that watch, people who like to disdain me, Mr. the Horns of the World, they only require alignment of incentives. When careers, budgets, liability exposure, elections, and institutional credibility all intersect, The system does not need meetings in back rooms. It only needs everyone to quietly understand what not to touch. And once you see that, everything else makes sense. That's why some cases never die, folks. And that's why others never truly begin. Why referrals disappear, why silence becomes policy, why correction is treated as threat, why accountability becomes conditional. It's all predictable, not because people are identical, but because the architecture that they're operating in disciplines behavior. And this is the part that cuts the deepest, folks. Because the people who feel the full weight of the system is never the people who built it. It's you and me. It's everyone out there. It's all of you, the civilians, the complainants, the families, you know, the civilians who struggle through it, the complainants like myself, like Garen Petty, who have to struggle to fight the systems that are, constantly fighting back against us, the families like Amber Smith and Nancy Smith, who are wrecked apart and torn apart by the decisions made by people who were short-sighted and didn't even understand the limits of their ability to criminally investigate something. And then they've continued to bash and hold them down just for the sake of saying that we didn't do anything wrong. The defendants in the courtrooms that are getting charged with traffic ticket issues and getting overcharged and license stolen. The reporters, the ones that get the stories handed to them that never have to work for it, like the Chronicle, or the other ones that have to work for it. The troublemakers. I fit in a lot of these categories. The ones who ask the wrong questions in the wrong rooms, right? But we're the ones that are going to get motion, or we get motion, we get filings, we get pressure, we get consequences. And while the power gets the insulation. So when people ask why this story matters beyond one chief, one prosecutor, one sheriff, one commissioner, or 3, one journalist, 5 journalists, this is the answer. Because this is not a story about individuals. This is a story about how accountability is rooted and routed in modern local government. It shows you who gets processed, who gets protection, who gets investigated, and who gets absorbed. It shows you that justice is not only about laws on paper, it is about how the system decides to use them. And once you understand that, you stop asking who is right. You start asking the real question, who's untouchable? And how did they become that way? That's the real thorough line. That's what ties the city to the county to the commissioners to the prosecutors to the sheriffs to the courts. Not ideology, not party lines, protection. And once protection becomes the organizing principle, the public's going to stop being the client. The system becomes its client. The system becomes its own client, folks. And eventually, as any good client will, it'll eat itself. So, that's the problem that we find ourselves in today. We find ourselves in a conundrum where we can't trust anyone. You want us to trust Lorraine police, but you guys won't discipline yourselves. Sheriff Hall, you want me to trust you, but yet, where's my investigation that was promised? I'm speaking from experience. I can provide all the emails that show that I helped out along the way and the integral roles I played. And all I asked for was an honest investigation. You couldn't even give me that. And if you couldn't give me that, then why couldn't you at least get me sent to an honest, open investigator? You know what? I wasn't worthy of that. I was worthy to review all your websites, talk to everybody, leak information for you, and send that letter, and then the response to it. But I'm not good enough to get an actual investigation. I was good enough to go after the whole TIA thing. I was good enough to not talk to you for a while until I demolished everybody along the way. And then you called me up to tell me that, oh yeah, you knew the tax wasn't going to pass, and why? I mean, wow, just big balls in Cowtown will all go down. Big balls in Cowtown will dance around. That's all I know. I mean, just wow. You do you, boo. But I get it. He did give me the best advice ever. My social media is the best weapon I have. He's not wrong. I will say the stupid thing with the cigar and the car and Angel and the Lorraine police car. I'm mad. I didn't want to post it because I like bias. I mean, I can be biased, but I still posted it. I don't see his page. He's had me blocked since day one on his election page or whatever, which he has the right to do. I'm not sure why he's still posting stuff on there, but that one crossed some lines, folks, and apparently even an ORC. I used to smoke, so I don't really look at it the way I know the health ramifications is what concerns me the most about it. But I was like, whatever, he's smoking in their car. I didn't really think about the aspects of it until the person that sent it out to everybody pointed out that it was illegal, and he's right. It was against policy, both city and police policy. So there you go. I did the little mini story on it and put it out there. In the meantime, guys, all I can say is thanks for tuning in. I appreciate you. Check in soon, often. We're working on the format every day. I'm working on how to figure out how to get a guest in here. But in the meantime, be lawful and not awful, law enforcement. And just understand something. When it comes to this gun lawsuit, we brought this because what they're trying to do is whittle away your constitutional protections. All they did was increase a few M1s to M2s, mess around with, concealed carry stuff, and then made some statements that refer back to a 2022 law that's no longer applicable because the state dropped it down. Mark my words, this will get sent away. They can't win this. Oh, and I've already been in touch with Buckeye Firearms, and they're going to be, taking a very strong interest in this case. So, again, believe what you want. Hate me all you want. I'm not wrong, and I haven't been. So thanks for tuning in, guys. Always watch and always record. Make sure you guys get a body camera. Always protect yourself. Make sure you hug your loved ones before you go anywhere, and you guys make it a good night. Thanks for tuning in. This is Aaron Knapp. I'm here with Unplugged with Aaron Knapp. We appreciate you guys, and we'll see you next time.
Unplug with Nap. Yeah, we cut through the noise. No script, no leash, no polished decoys. Broadcasting without permission. We don't ask. We lift the curtain and we drop the mask. Unplug with Nap. Yeah, we cut through the noise. No script, no leash, no polished decoys. Broadcasting without permission. We don't ask. We lift the curtain and we drop the mask. Unplug with Nap. Yeah, we cut through the noise. No script, no leash, no polished decoys. Broadcasting without permission. We don't ask. We lift the curtain and we drop the mask. Unplug with Nap.